The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good afternoon and warm welcome to our today's webinar, which is a discussion on NBFC MFIs. The credit rating webinar today is an update on the challenging environment of microfinance sector on account of COVID-19. I'm Sanjay Kumar Agarwal, Senior Director at Credit Rating. This presentation will be made by Mr. Ravi Kumar Dasari, Associate Director at Credit Rating and a sector expert on MFIs. I would like to inform you that our discussion is in form of presentation, which is visible on your screen. In case of queries, please key in the question in the slot provided. We will take the Q&A session at the end of the presentation. Next slide, please. The flow of presentation is structured in a way to understand the past experiences of the sector on the occurrence of event risk and how COVID is a new addition to the event risk. Further, the presentation will delve into details on the likely impact of COVID on asset quality of NBFC MFI and understand the preparedness in terms of the current capital structure, liquidity, and the vulnerability for funding support. The impact of COVID on profitability will be analyzed on a preliminary basis, as the full-scale impact on the provisioning and credit cost will be clearer post-opening of the lockdown and regulatory pronouncement thereof. Finally, the presentation will discuss the outlook on the sector. Over to you, Ravi. Please take it.
Thank you, sir. I'll start with first of all on the overview of MFI sector currently, and then CARES coverage, and then we'll proceed along with the presentation. So post the demonetization, sector was back on track in terms of growth with loan portfolio, increasing from 1 lakh crore in FY17 to 2 lakh crore as on December 2019. There has been change in market share of various players in the market from FY17 to December 19. Banks, which had a share of 37%, has increased to 40%, primarily on account of Bharat Financial Inclusion merger with IndusInd Bank. NBFC MFI share has reduced from 42% in FY17 to 31% as on December 2019 on account of some large NBFC MFI converting into SFBs and Bharat Financial getting merged with bank. Further, SFBs have increased their market share from 14% to 18% and other NBFCs from 6% to 10%, with larger NBFCs showing good growth in this segment within their cap of doing microfinance business to the extent of 10% of their total assets. CARE has a coverage of 24 NBFC MFIs out of 96 NBFC MFIs registered with RBI and 51% of the total AUM of NBFC MFIs. The current slide, we're focusing on asset quality and the past experiences. Event-based risk is inherent in the business model of microfinance. In the past, the sector has faced event risks, including political risk, regulatory risks, and natural calamities in certain geographies. However, the extent of impact of these event-based risks is different and depends on the external environment, that is the political risk, regulatory risk, natural calamities in certain geographies, and internal preparedness of the microfinance entities operating in this segment in terms of level of capitalization, liquidity, along with geographical diversification. We will be discussing in detail two mega event risks which occurred in the microfinance space and its impact in terms of end losses to the sector. First is the Andhra Pradesh crisis. The Andhra Pradesh crisis started with bringing of ordinance by AP state government, leading to sharp deterioration in asset quality of MFIs due to geographic concentration in AP. The resultant impact was bankruptcy of many MFIs that had exposure to AP and funding constraints for the overall sector. The left hand of the slide reflects the asset quality trend, showing that during AP crisis, Portfolio at risk more than 90 days increased sharply from 0.3% in 2010 to 58% in 2012 for AP-based MFIs. Thus, on an overall basis, the end losses were around 35% for the sector, with 7,000 crores of AP exposure taking a hit out of total portfolio of 20,000 crores by the MFIs across India. This event risk highlighted the importance of geographic diversification. Second was demonetization. Post demonetization in November 2016, microfinance sector faced challenges in terms of maintaining asset quality, with collection efficiencies declining sharply. Post demonetization, many borrowers delayed repayments as they faced cash crunch due to insufficient availability of cash in circulation, as entire collections for MFIs were cash based. As compared to the earlier event risk, which was regional in nature, this event impacted the MFIs across India. As reflected on the right hand of the slide, overall cumulative collection efficiencies fell to 89% in November 16 from a high of around 99% levels pre-demonetization. However, the range of collection efficiency was highly dispersed across the Indian states, with a minimum of 60% in November 2016. Even post improvement in cash availability, collection efficiencies marginally improved to 90% in March 2017. However, in some pockets, it continued to show a decline on account of political interventions and loan waiver rumors. So, effectively, it is expected that the loss on account of this event was in the range of 3 to 10% of the total loan portfolio of different MFIs. One point to remember here is that the large NBFC MFIs converted into SFBs in 2018. Hence, gross NPA for FY18 is relatively lower as it is for NBFC MFIs, as it excludes SFBs, which took higher losses during demonetization. Now, on the current asset quality. Based on the experience in the past, the sector became more resilient, with entities focusing on geographical diversification and maintaining adequate liquidity and capitalization. The self-regulatory organizations, that is including Sadhan and MFIN, have played an important role in implementing code of conduct for its members to do responsible lending and engaging various stakeholders on a continuous basis and more focused during occurrence of any event risk to control the negative impact on the sector. Asset quality has remained comfortable apart from the intermittent event risk which occur on account of various reasons, including socio-political risk, regulatory risk, natural calamities, and now health risk, that is COVID-19. There is an ongoing event risk in Assam prior to the occurrence of COVID-19. I think we'll discuss more in detail. COVID-19 is the new addition to the event risk, as it can impact health of borrowers, leading to potential earning losses. Further, as a precautionary measure, Government of India has announced lockdown to prevent spread of COVID-19, which has led to closure on non-essential business offices, leading to earning losses during this period of lockdown. However, Government of India has been using various support services to ensure delivery of essential requirements to the population. Hence, stabilization is expected to take some time, with borrowers resuming their business, their jobs. Till date, the impact of COVID spread has been different across geographies. The current slide shows the geographical spread of NBFC MFIs across the states. If you look at this slide, in some geographies, the COVID has impacted a lot higher as compared to other geographies. States such as Maharashtra and Tamil Nadu are impacted to a larger extent. These two states, Maharashtra and Tamil Nadu, constitute around 26% of total loan portfolio of 27 NBFC MFIs considered for the study. Considering the pace of spread of COVID in these states, asset quality of the entities having operations in these states could be impacted to a higher extent as compared to other states because of lockdown or likely extension of lockdown and health impact on borrowers and the earning losses. Further, we go into detail across the geographic basis, but now on rural and urban segments. This slide shows the rural and urban spread of the portfolio, wherein 26% is urban and 74% is rural. Spread of COVID in urban areas is likely to be higher on account of high density of population, higher traveling history abroad, and indoor working environment. Hence, the urban areas could be a hotspot in terms of monitoring by the government agencies for controlling the COVID impact on large scale. The current spread of COVID, as per the data, also shows that urban areas such as Mumbai, Pune, Delhi, Chennai are relatively affected higher as compared to other areas. Considering this, the resultant impact expected is that the asset quality of urban based MFIs would be affected on the higher side as compared to rural areas. The current slide, which analyzes the activities of the borrowers, on the left hand side of the slide shows the breakup of loan portfolio based on lending purpose. Now this shows that 50% is agri and agri allied, 22% trade and services, then there is manufacturing and other consumption loans in terms of household finance, education and home loan improvement. Now COVID impact will vary based on the activities of the borrower, wherein there will be less impact on agriculture and agri-allied segment such as dairy, poultry. Salaried segment in the residential housing segment like housekeeping staff. Small business such as vegetable vendor, fruit vendor and other essential service providers focusing on local micro markets. Now high impact on salaried segment working in SME manufacturing segment, which may see some downsize. Small business in the manufacturing production segment due to lower economic growth. And lastly, travel and tourism related jobs and business. To summarize now on the COVID impact on asset quality based on past experiences. In the past also, the sector has bounced back post event risk, made changes to their models and strengthened further their capital base to take care of future event risks. So if you look at the slide, there has been continuous equity infusion post demonetization. And the leverage has improved considerably. In case of AP crisis, which was driven by regulatory and political risk, led to large scale default and high end losses as borrowers had ability to pay but willingness to pay was low. In case of demonetization, there was a temporary disturbance due to unavailability of cash. However, post improvement in cash availability, some regions and some borrowers, due to political intervention, became willful defaulters. In comparison to these two events, which were mega event risk for the sector, and draw from these experiences and apply on the current COVID scenario, it's a temporary event. Lockdown is for some days, resulting in earning losses for borrowers. but mitigated to some extent by moratorium provided by the microfinance institutions. There will be willful defaulters who will take opportunity and not pay the EMI, but till date there is no visible political risk, but have to observe post end of moratorium period. There will be default on account of COVID-19 as there will be health impact of borrowers and could be permanent earning losses due to job loss or business closure. CARE expects that the borrowers will make efforts to repay post moratorium period, so willingness to pay will be there. However, there will be some drop in collection efficiencies for some period with higher delinquencies dependent on the manufacturing segment. The ability to pay will get hampered on account of lower economic activity and health issues of the borrower. Now on ALM and liquidity, based on past data, we have analyzed ALM and liquidity of 14 NBFC MFIs and observed that the entities have been maintaining liquidity to sustain at least for the next 3 months. The data shows that it is higher, but it could be corrected because some of them is March data, March 2020 and current data. So we could see some moderation in the liquidity, but at least they could sustain for next 3 months. When we say liquidity, we are looking at cash and liquid investments as a percentage of 1 year repayments. Given the stance of NBFC MFIs to offer moratorium to their customers for next 3 months, the cash inflow from advances will be very low and they will completely dependent on their cash reserves to make payment. Continuing our discussion further, we look at resource profile to understand any support from lenders to overcome the liquidity stress. RBI announced regulatory package to provide relief to the borrowers of banks and NBFCs to mitigate the impact of COVID, leading to lockdown and impacting their earnings. NBFC MFIs on their part also announced moratorium to their borrowers and expected similar support from banks as majority of their borrowings are from banks. Some of the NBFC MFIs have also applied for moratorium with banks. However, there is an ambiguity currently whether NBFCs are included under the package and awaiting clarification from the regulator. This moratorium is critical for NBFC MFIs to sustain their business and tide over liquidity stress. Apart from the balance sheet funding accessed by NBFC MFIs, they have also accessed securitization route for funding their growth in the past. For securitization transactions, especially PTCs, there are two scenarios. One is where investors agree for rescheduling of the payouts and agree for moratorium. Second is where investors don't agree for the moratorium. In that event, adequacy of credit enhancement during the moratorium period needs to be tested as there will be lower collections during the period. Adequacy of credit enhancements has to be assessed based on cash collateral as OC cannot be factored in these payouts. As most of the transactions are of ultimate payment structure, they will have scheduled interest payments and principal payouts will be linked to the collections and ultimate payment of the principal has to be done at maturity. Hence, there will be cushion for these transactions during the moratorium period. But in the ultimate payment structure, challenges will be for those transactions which are maturing during the moratorium period and wherein cash collateral alone might not be sufficient for payment of principal amount at maturity. So further in the ultimate payment structure also, if there is an extension of maturity date, in that event, there will be shortfall at the time of maturity as credit enhancement will not be sufficient to cover for the remaining maturity. CARE has outstanding securitization transaction in the microfinance space, which are mostly ultimate payment structure. There is no maturity of these transactions during the moratorium period. As per calculations of CARE, there is a minimum cover of 3 times of payouts for the next 3 months on the CARE rated securitization transactions. NBFC MFIs in the past increased their operations on the back of equity infusion and also relatively better access to bank funding as compared to other NBFCs in the space, especially wholesale NBFCs post ILFS crisis. Post the demonetization impact on profitability in FY17 and FY18, the entities reported healthy profitability in FY19. The profitability of the MFIs is largely dependent on their ability to manage operating expenses and credit costs, as NIM are range bound given RBI regulation in terms of pricing the assets to their borrowers. NBFCs MFIs in the past have risen to the challenges and had improved their operating efficiencies on the back of adoption of technology and increasing efficiencies by improving staff productivity. They also made efforts to reduce credit costs by increasing geographical diversification. Now, the current event risk is also expected to put some pressure on the margins in terms of increasing credit costs due to slower economic growth. Further, with funding constraint and given existing infrastructure, there will be pressure on the operating efficiencies, which will result in shrinkage of margins. As you can see, the maximum share in operating expenses is on account of staff salaries, as the microfinance segment is manpower intensive business. Lastly, on the outlook on the microfinance sector going forward, asset quality will show some deterioration on account of already event risk in the sector, which is Assam, Orissa, and now COVID-19 impact. There will be shrinkage in balance sheet on account of funding constraint. However, we could see some support coming from specialized institutions like NABARD, SIDBI, Mudra, etc. Further, also on account of PSL status, there could be some traction in the second half of FY21. There will be shrinkage in margins in FY21 with reduction in portfolio, fixed operating costs, and increase in credit costs. However, they will be compensated to some extent on account of fee-based business from BC model or co-lending model. We will see some increase in proportion of book towards managed portfolio for the NBFC MFIs to sustain this infrastructure expenses. Thank you, dear participants. We would now be taking a break of 2 minutes before we come back to take your queries. You are requested to start keying in your questions. We'll start with the questions. The first question is, for the financial sector, as there would be difficulty to collect from customers, what is your suggestion as there would be high risk lending to these customers? So effectively, see, if you look in terms of the riskiness of asset classes, obviously microfinance segment is the highest risk segment in terms of the risk, and accordingly it gets priced when as per the business model also. So it is a call by the company in terms of their ability to handle and manage the business risks in this segment. So on slide 11, the denominations are in crores, so rupees crores. Effectively, we have inflows of 15,000 crores vis-a-vis a repayment of debt repayment of 12,000 odd crores. There's one more question in terms of equity infusion data reflected on slide 10. Please suggest whether the equity is infused by P guys or it is by the promoter itself. So in terms of the equity infusion, so this is what we have seen is mainly by the private equity investors who have infused into the company. There's one more question in terms of in case of non-availability of liquidity support, what do you think will happen to MFIs? Will it be next ILFS? See, the answer it will not be straightforward to this question because currently there is a liquidity support in terms of their cash reserves which the MFIs are managing. Second part is they have the of securitization book available with them, which they can sell in the market to garner further liquidity. And with turn of events, we could expect some support from the banks in terms of further refinancing to these entities. The next question is RBI working on regulating NBFCs under their direct control? See, currently all the NBFCs are under the control of RBI. So in terms of the supervision, especially the NBFC systemically important, there is a regular supervision which happens by RBI, including for the NBFC MFIs. There's one more question. How many of the MFIs are expected to withstand the moratorium without default in their portfolio? Now, see, we have analyzed 14 NBFC MFIs ALMs. So what we have looked at is they have close to 2.5 months to 3 months of cash reserves. Now, if there is further extension of lockdown, there could be fall in collection efficiencies. So that there has to be support coming in from the banks in terms of continuity of the resource support to the entities. Otherwise, the stress will increase in the sector. How the next question is, how will microfinance companies connect to their customers to help them once restoration happens? See, currently also there is a lot of effort by the MFIs to keep touch base with their customers, even though collections are not happening or very low collections are happening field, but there is a regular connect which the MFIs are trying to maintain with the customers, more in terms of a social support, in terms of creating awareness about the COVID and what they can do at best in terms of protecting themselves. So this connect will help them in terms of when they further connect after the moratorium period is over and the lockdown situation is eased. There is one more question. Also, we have seen that asset quality has deteriorated. What is the future of MFIs? Now, see, at the beginning of the presentation, we said that these event risks are inherent in the business model of the MFIs, and the pricing is accordingly done by the MFIs. And we have seen in the past they have been able to overcome shock on account of these event risks with substantial capital infusion happening. And given the opportunity currently also in the market, we expect that they'll continue to attract equity, uh, and the asset quality issues will be there intermittently, which will be absorbed by these capital infusions which will happen from time to time. Next question is, what is the estimate of collection efficiencies best case scenario and worst case scenario immediately after the moratorium period? By when you can estimate the collection efficiency to reach normal stage? So the two scenarios, two experiences, what we shared in the for the past, AP Brace and Demon, there also we saw that once when we expecting that once the moratorium period will be over, there could be some teething issues in terms of collection because people will take some time to stabilize. So there will be fall in collection efficiencies start with, and which will stabilize over a period of time. So it could be 3 to 4 months where you could see the collection efficiencies reaching to some stable levels, but there we could see some end losses also coming in because of the impact we have discussed earlier. So out of your data, what is the exposure of total microcredit to the most affected states? I think we discussed this. I think 26% of the total portfolio, which is there in Maharashtra and Tamil Nadu. What are the directives issued by self-regulatory bodies to the MFI sector in the wake of COVID-19? I think this is a very detailed disclosures, directives have been given by the SROs. I think primarily to take care of their customers in terms of um, uh, the advice which they need to give to the customers to prevent further outbreak of COVID, and how they should also conduct themselves during these times, and post also opening of the lockdown, how they should behave on the field. I think that there's more of a responsible lending kind of instructions have been given by the self-regulatory bodies. So one more question, which says, do you envisage a model shift in terms of microfinance field operations framework currently given the COVID implications? Should the MFI field model be revisited? Can it be? Now, see, historically, also if you see the way entities have adapted to the changing circumstances, and post RBI bringing in a margin cap and the kind of margins which they can have. So they have adapted, brought in technology, tried to improve their operating efficiencies, and with the help of technology now, if you look at the disbursements which were earlier happening in cash, now most of them are doing it through bank accounts. That's one major change which has happened in terms of disbursement being to the bank account of borrowers. Secondly, they are also trying for collections to happen through say some outlets, in terms of the payment banks, or in terms of the POS available in the nearby villages. So there is definitely an effort by the MFIs to do collections also on a cashless mode of collections. So definitely there will be change which the microfinance entities will try to do. In terms of the model, again, what we are also envisaging is that given the funding constraints which MFIs might face to grow, so there will be also a lot of focus on the banking correspondent model to earn a fee-based income to sustain their infrastructure costs. So one question on what is treatment of care is going to be default by MFIs on accounts of banks and NBFCs not extending moratorium. So we will also assess based on case by case basis in terms of the liquidity what the entities have, and the plans in terms of their infusion and kind of support they are getting from banks on an individual basis. We look in detail on that, and then only we will be able to comment on the credit profile of MFIs in the current situation. Now, which segment will be the affected the most? I think, as discussed, I think the manufacturing borrowers, depending on manufacturing or production related activities, because other being a part of essential services, agri being a part of essential services, some of the local jobs being there, which are a requirement of the local micro markets. I think they will be able to sustain. But in terms of borrowers who are employed by SMEs or manufacturing units, and who are into manufacturing segment because of the lower economic activity, I think that segment will be the highest affected. So, have any MFIs defaulted yet? No, not yet. In one slide, you have ranked MFIs from 1 to 14. So we have done this based on the cash and liquid investments they are having. So the MFI one has the cash and liquid investments available to sustain for say 9 months, and then as it goes down, we have ranked it accordingly. Now, what is holding banks from providing moratorium? Your view? See, I think currently it's more to do with the regulatory clarity what they are awaiting, and second is I think there is also and we believe that could be some liquidity also being made available through the LTRO facilities, which the banks feel is sufficient. But I think the trickle down effect might not happen. So there are discussions happening with banks, but we have to wait and see what happens finally, whether banks will be willing to provide moratorium for the MFIs. As 74% is lending is done in rural areas, there are not much digital savvy. Collections is going to be difficult. What are the new digital and innovative modes to collect? Now, see, if you look at the data in the past, also, as I said, now 100% almost in some of the MFIs disbursement is happening through the bank accounts. So effectively, they are able to visit the banks and withdraw the money. They have been now digitally. They've been able to do a biometric transactions through the micro ATMs. So the kind of digital education that the MFIs are doing, apart from providing credit, I think there is a lot of literacy levels on the digital front has been there in the rural areas also. Now, in terms of modes of collection, they are making some efforts in terms of the local kirana stores being allowed to be a BC for the MFI so as to collect the cash. So that experimentation is going on, and there could be some payment bank licenses which banks which also will be doing a kind of a collections. So there are efforts, and in the past also it has been successful, I think. So this is also going to be on a larger basis. What do you mean by increase in proportion of managed portfolio to sustain infra expenses? See, the MFIs have expanded their branches, increased their staffs. Now, with rundown of on-book portfolio happening because they're not incrementally, funds are slower to come. They already created a branch structure and manpower to cater to a certain level of portfolio. If that is not happening, they have to manage expenses. The second route is to have a banking correspondent model route or a co-lending model where they would earn a fee income. So the same staff and the branch could be used to do business on behalf of banks whereby they earn a fee. So through that at least they will be able to sustain some of their infra expenses. Whether any bank has extended moratorium to MFI customers. I think a lot of discussion is happening with the private sector banks also. Uh, so people have MFIs have applied to banks, and we could see some positive results from the private sector banks. There's a question. I think it's a question and answer in itself. It says post demonetization led to bank transfer and no cash dispersal. Will COVID-19 promote to digital repayment via UPI and other digital options? I think it could be the next. I think it's a question and answer itself, in a way to summarize. There's a question that event risks seem to be concentrated in eastern India, started with AP, now in Orissa and Assam. The geography of MFI seems to be wishing it away. Is MFI business looking like a business with a finite time frame? See, if you look at the way things have moved in the sector, event risks have not concentrated to a certain area. It has obviously, with respect to the developments which have taken place, it was AP. Then we saw during Demon, it was Maharashtra and Uttar Pradesh. Now we are currently seeing in Orissa and Assam. I think it has to do more with the pace at which the microfinance business expands in a particular area, plus the political risks that get developed over a period of time, and any natural calamities that might arise in those areas of operations. I think it could be reasons could be different at different points of time, and it is not necessarily that eastern India is where maximum of the event risks are happening. There's a question of majority of urban portfolio MFIs are likely to be migrant workers. With these workers moving back to their hometown, do you think this could impact collections? See, this question we also in terms of the uh, process, what we looked at is that currently, if you look at the urban portfolios, MFIs also do their screening in terms of the stability of the borrowers in a particular geography locations. So they are also likely to avoid migrant workers who could be very whose movements are very for a very short period of time. They generally give loans to people in urban areas who have been having at least staying in an area for a long bit of time, and also looking at the job profiles also. So if you look at the way the urban MFIs have also given loans, it could be for salaried customers who are working as maids or drivers, and even business segments who have their own small businesses in the nearby areas. So not much impact could be there in terms of the migrant worker issues. There's a question on how much do you think borrowers' own ability to repay will be impacted across urban and rural areas? I think we have discussed the impact in terms of high impact, low impact. So obviously, agri, all those essential services would continue to do business to earn their livelihoods. I think the manufacturing segment would be impacted. So to that extent, across urban and rural areas, that segment will be the more vulnerable segment. So the question whether there will be a permanent change in asset quality, I think we have seen it's a volatile thing. So as and when the event risks occur, there is a sharp jump in the NPAs, and then subsequently things normalize. I think back to normalcy, very comfortable asset quality is demonstrated over a period of time. So the asset quality in this segment would continue to remain volatile on account of event risks. There is a question. It is seen that NBFCs are facing challenges from getting funds from banks. What is your view on sustain of these NBFCs? Will there be any other source of financing NBFCs? I think we have discussed for specifically for NBFC MFIs. What we have said is there could be change in business model. They could be become more of a servicing entities and do business on behalf of banks or other financial institutions. That is one way of looking at the business. They could still attract other sources of funding in terms of ECB's external commercial borrowings. They continue to attract. There could be some attraction from the HNIs with respect to the yields and the profitability the entities have. So we could see some traction happening on that side also. So there's a question: can you name 4 to 5 players who are expected to be winners post this situation? See, I'll not name them, but I'll state that whomsoever are currently maintaining liquidity in terms of their ability to withstand for some time in terms of during the moratorium period and post the lockdown and continue to attract funds in terms of the resource. I think they will be the entities which will sustain. So is ALM and liquidity factoring repayments, or it is just based on cash reserves and payouts? So effectively what we've stated is this ALM and liquidity, we have looked at what cash and liquid reserves the entities has vis-a-vis what they have to do the repayment for the next 1 year. So it looks at the whatever the debt repayments which need to be done on the balance sheet debt. So it says during demon there were activities, availability of cash. It is both at this point of time. What is the range of GNP you would think MFI industry would see and eventually write-offs? See, given so it's very difficult to assess at this point of time. But given the past experiences of demon, you could correlate what happened during demon, which was again a temporary situation which was there, and still the industry witnessed write-offs of close to 3 to 8, 10%. I think it could still remain in that range if there is a bounce back by the borrowers. As COVID-19 cases have not been reported much in rural areas, do you feel the MFIs having presence in rural areas will be stabilized faster? I think that is what the slide also will try to link it in terms of that they will bounce back faster as compared to the urban areas. So are small finance banks in a better position as compared to NBFCs? Uh, See, there's some diversification which has happened in terms of asset class in the small finance banks. Plus, the resource profile is also different to NBFCs. So they'll be relatively better than the NBFC MFIs. There's one more question. What is the maximum leverage or minimum capitalization required by MFIs to maintain the credit rating? So effectively, if you look at the aggregate numbers, what we have seen is that there has been improvement in terms of the leverage with the capital mobilization happening at regular intervals. I think what we look at from a credit rating point is to have a cushion in terms of whatever is the regulatory requirement. So we look at capital adequacy and we look at leverage from a regulatory, and there has to be some cushion as compared to the regulatory requirement given the event risks which might hit the sector. So to absorb some risks, losses on account of those risks, they need to maintain that cushion on a continuous basis as compared to other NBFCs. I think we have taken most of the questions. If anything left out, we will email them to them individually. So thanks again to all the participants for taking their time out and being a part of this K Ratings webinar. We hope the discussion was insightful and look forward to your participation in future also. For further any queries, feedback or suggestion, please respond in the feedback mail which will be coming to you no sooner the webinar ends. Goodbye for now.